Hello all. And now we have a special slot presentation by Mr. Ajit Pillai, Regional APAC Director, Morphisec, and he'll be speaking on breach prevention made easy. And we know that Morphisec is the world leader in providing advanced security solutions for mid-sized to small enterprises around the globe. They simplify security and can automatically block modern attacks from the endpoint to the cloud. With this, I introduce Mr. Ajit. Thanks for joining us. And over to you for your presentation on breach prevention made easy.
Okay. Thank you. You can hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, the next 15 minutes or so, I would just give an overview whether breach prevention is actually a myth or a reality, because in the cyber world, there have been multiple solutions, multiple practices, multiple problems which we are dealing with. So, let me quickly, what I'm going to cover is just to give you an introduction, the current situation in the cybersecurity world, especially on the endpoint space, and what has been our mission and how we actually help customers. So I'll give you an overview and then get into the problem. So Morphisec is actually driven by a unique technology called as moving target defense. And this unique technology is getting more popular. You are seeing more and more cybersecurity players trying to adopt this technology. We are a proactive endpoint automated control, which many of your current controls don't actually even know about it. So let me quickly get on to the problem. What is the problem? And one side it's a problem, the other side it's an opportunity. The investment in cybersecurity infrastructure has been growing drastically. In 2021, it has been 218 billion, and we anticipate in 2025 it should be hitting almost 316 billion. And that's the kind of investment which is actually happening globally. Now, despite this, you see that the cyber crime is also increasing rampantly. And you see the CAGR is almost 15%. Today, it's almost like 6 trillion in 2021, and it is actually going to get into the 10.5 trillion. That's how the damage is also growing. So, what is the problem? And we have been seeing it every day. You have been hearing it right across, despite having different controls, a different technology, different practices. All this you'd have heard, like SolarWinds breach, or Kaseya ransomware attack, or any of the other attacks. Many of them are infamous because it is not coming out into the public domain. But having said that, why is this happening primarily? Let's do a little bit analysis on this. Especially when you're talking about endpoints, when you're talking about your laptops, desktops, etc., you have a lot of the solution for preventing these kind of attacks. And if you look at the plethora of the solutions, it starts with your antivirus, your next gen antivirus, your EDR solutions, XDR solutions. This is pretty popular in the marketplace. And despite this, breaches are happening. When you talk about breaches, straight away it hits the company. There's been a lot of loss of business, financial impact, brand erosion, opportunity cost, and the laundry list goes on and on. So, why is this happening? The main reason why this has been happening is there are multiple unknown attacks which has been there in the wild, which is actually compromising your networks in the digital world. And this could be in the cyber world, we call it as ransomware, or a new malware, or variants of known attacks, or even from a technical perspective, you would say that there are a lot of unpatched vulnerabilities which have been there. So some of the examples which I'm just going to talk here, like ransomware, Conti ransomware, which went through all your existing defenses, and your backdoors, which has been there. And we can talk for us, especially on the kind of Cobalt Strike, variants of Cobalt Strike, memory beacons, etc. And of course, the supply chain and malware downloaders. So this is what has been happening in the current world. So let's take a step back and understand why these are happening and what are the gaps. When you look at any kind of an automated control or practices today, many of them are having a reactive approach. Only when you get to know that there is a breach which has happened, or you are actually putting a detection and remediation kind of a solution. So, unless and until you know there is some kind of an anomaly, you're not being able to remediate. You look at your traditional solutions, which has been used like EDR or antivirus, etc. But on the other side, when you look at an attack, how do you actually detect these attacks? These attacks are detected by various automated controls, which have these signatures, heuristics, machine learning, and ultimately you end up, no matter whatever automated control you have, you kill up a process, you kill the process, you delete the registry, you remove the machine from your network. This is the current practice. And what happens is everyone tend to look at what is the mean time to response, what is the mean time to resolution, and how we are reducing the risk posture. So we believe this architecture is a little bit reactive because we are not being proactive. We are just trying to follow what's been happening in the dark world. So what did we do? We came out with a prevention and a proactive architecture. The simple logic has been what can be prevented, we need to prevent and put in all our resources there and not depending on any kind of prior knowledge, meaning any kind of intelligence. What those are good, those detection and remediations are good. And this led us to an innovation called as this moving target defense. If you look at the concept of moving target defense, it actually comes from the um, defense, from the physical defense. You talk about US Homeland Security, they came out with this policy and said why cyber world is not able to really prevent is because we are not being offensive. We have always been defensive. So how do you become offensive? By changing your static nature of your infrastructure and environment. How do we do that? Because when you really look at any of the application which has been running across in any infrastructure, it has got a typical static way of deploying, a typical static way of operations. And this is also known to the dark world. Then they take advantage of what is the vulnerability which has been happening. So this concept, what is the industry talking about? Gartner today says one of the most emerging technology in the cyber world is actually this moving target defense. So in a nutshell, before we get into the core of this, what is the simple definition of moving target defense? This particular technology hides your exploits from the dark world, and it helps to stop a lot of ransomware attacks, 0 days, and other advanced attacks. So, how has Morphisec taken this MTD, moving target defense, into their portfolio, and how we have been helping the cyber world is what we will talk in the next 5 minutes. Morphisec is like, so breach prevention, we are trying to make it very easy. It is no longer a myth. It can be a reality. And there is no silver bullet for cybersecurity. You'll have multiple controls practices, etc. So we have a broad framework where we assess, protect, and monitor and respond. So we have multiple incident response services. We have solutions like Morphisec Scout, Guard, Keep, etc. And there are so many customers who actually come back to us and keep using our incident response on a regular basis just because that we have the experience and exposure to these advanced attacks which has been happening. We are not talking about those traditional attacks. So we have been protecting close to 8 million plus endpoints across, even in the Indian context. We are present in many of the financial organizations, starting from your big banks like S Bank, etc., etc. So what do? We actually do a real-time server and endpoint protection with our solutions. And today in the marketplace, when you really look at it, this moving target defense and your existing controls is becoming the kind of a best security which has been available. And why is this moving target defense so effective? It changes the rules of the game. When you look at attackers, they undermine detection. They try to evade your existing controls. And a moving target defense, it completely changes the paradigm, makes it difficult for the dark world to really understand what is the footprint, what kind of reconnaissance which they try to do in an infrastructure, what has been the kind of OS which is there, etc., etc. So because of this, Microsoft themselves have advocated that Morphisec is one of a good solution which adds to their existing native OS controls. And the primary difference between the current approach which the market is doing and what we are advocating in the market is that we need to prevent the tactics, and it's more of an offensive kind of an approach rather than just a prevention approach. I'm sorry, a detection and response approach, which has been done. Thereby, we have been able to prevent a lot of these breaches which has happened. This is a kind of the proof is in the pudding. Microsoft has recommended Morphisec for zero-day attack protection, and you could see all this is available in the local domain. And we also exist with the current controls because we bring the gap in terms of the kind of attacks which has been there. When you look at the attack framework today, it is more of polymorphic attack. It is no longer one technique which has been used. You've got multiple people who have already known the dark world monitoring. They know exactly there are multiple groups which exchange information and makes it difficult for the cyber world to actually protect. So some of the good reviews which have been there, I'm not saying this, but you've got industry experts like Gartner, like SAM's report, your peer spot, which keep talking. So 1 second, I will just explain a little bit more on this moving target defense. How does it work? So when you typically look at any application on your desktop, most of your existing controls treat this as a part of your Microsoft OS. I'm just taking an example of Google Chrome. There are multiple such examples which are there. And during the loading of this particular application, there are certain system requirements which has already been declared and controlled by in a Windows environment. Your Windows loader does this. What we do is we actually change the structures every time the application is loading. And when you actually close the application and open the application, again, the resources keep changing, and it makes it difficult for the dark world to actually figure out what these changes which has happened, because we use an entropy algorithm and we randomize it, and then we also capture that kind of attacks in your skeleton trap and give you the visibility. So here, everything is being done locally, not depending on any central repository, the way the traditional solutions work. And we have prevented multiple infamous attacks and some of the famous attacks which we have actually discovered and we have given. And this is so popular engine that Cisco themselves have OEM this in part of their solutions to offer to their clients. So one other point which I would like to highlight here is when you typically look at a cyber kill chain, there are multiple stages. It starts from reconnaissance, exfiltration, etc. Because of our kind of an approach, we have been able to actually break the cyber kill chain and ensure that the CNC is not completed. And that is how we have been able to prevent. So we have, it's very simple. It's a very small agent which actually sits. I'm not going to get into those details. My team is there online. You could actually go deeper and talk to them how it works and how difference is and what differentiation it can bring from a cybersecurity perspective. One other point which I would like to highlight here is when many of them are using AVs today, the Gartner Leaders Quadrant, if you talk about the endpoint protection platform, it will be surprising for many to see that Microsoft is the leader, because the cyber world has always been investing money to protect Microsoft platforms. But we are working very closely with Microsoft in preventing many of these advanced attacks. Especially, we call this as Morphisec Guard. We give the same level of protection for VDI, and we also give the same level of protection for server and cloud. And the difference is we are actually talking about prevention. So these are all the Gartner reports which talk about. And from a server perspective, what do we do? In the cloud workload protection platform, we actually help the environment primarily from a memory protection and exploit preventions. And I'm not going to go detail into this. We can talk about it one-on-one if you want to know how we do it from a technology perspective, from a threat perspective, etc. So in short, Morphisec brings a runtime zero trust model. And we are one of the first to do it. we are getting a comprehensive zero trust model where which includes, when you typically look at a zero trust model, it starts with identity, network, device at the perimeter. We complete it by the gap between the perimeter and the runtime, and that's where we bring in a total end-to-end kind of a zero trust model for enterprises. And of course, we work with a lot of these integrations with the marketplace, etc., etc. And one of the key things which I would like to highlight here is we all know that Microsoft has got the maximum telemetry of what has been happening as far as the risk posture is concerned. We are integrated to Microsoft's own solutions. And in addition to this, we offer a lot of this incident response because you cannot just have automated controls. You need to really understand how your environment is and what has been happening, etc. So there are multiple modules in our incident response. And the differentiation, as I said earlier, is our expertise in handling these advanced attacks, which is actually a big gap today. So, to summarize, what do we bring to the table? We give you that additional unknown protection, and it's a very small agent, and we don't collect any data. And that's the reason why most of the customers actually love us, because of no privacy concerns and not much of a manual intervention. So, in a nutshell, I would say that today at the endpoint security market, you have prescriptive rules. That's where your solutions like AV, etc., all would be there. And today it has graduated to a state that where you see EDR, MDR, XDRs. We do coexist with them. That is one set of verticals. And the other set of verticals, we actually bring in a kind of a deterministic approach where 0-1, what can be prevented, needs to be prevented with our dynamically morphing the runtime and not getting into the seams and fields. So that's kind of an overview with the given time. Feel free to ask any questions. And we are a company based out of Israel and are headquartered in Boston. We handle our Asia Pacific operation out of India. And we do have a lot of customers in India, primarily 120 plus customers in each of the verticals, which I said. And the incident response is another area which customers engage us addition to the product. So that's it from my side. Questions?
Thank you, thank you. That was Mr. Ajit Pillai, Regional APAC Director, Morphisec, on a special presentation on breach prevention MEDISI and how Morphisec is helping enterprises, organizations to detect and help in preventing cyber attacks and the solutions what they're offering. Thank you so much, Ajit, for joining us today at two-day APAC Virtual Manufacturing
Yeah,
Conclave.
thank you very much. And
With this,
feel free to
we
reach
come to
out
the
to
end
any
of this session,
questions.
and we'll have a CEC tool video, which is being done by Creston, will be played on screen now. But before we wrap it up, let me again thank our partners, Guidance Tamil Nadu, Gold Partners, Siemens and Creston, Security Partner, Fortinet, Industry Automation Partner via Active Intelligence Partner, Click, and Associate Partners, Morphisec and Choice Solutions Limited, for being part of this conclave. And also with this, we come to the end of this industry presentation session, and join us around 2 in the afternoon for our first panel discussion of this two-day conclave. This panel discussion will be on making FMCG more profitable and efficient through technology, which will be moderated by Mr. Rajneesh Day, consulting editor at APAC News Network. Thank you so much. Can we have the video on screen, please? CEC tool video by Preston.